Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks especially to the panelists who've taken their time off on Saturday evening to join us. So as I said, we have Kumaran, Praveen, Daniel, and Bigul will be joining. So Kumaran, can you give us a brief intro about you? I know that you are the CTO of Tiny Magiq, and Tiny Magiq is a remote company. So can you give me more details about yourself and what you do?
We've been, Tiny Magiq is a company which has been helping people improve performance and thinking differently. One of the classical things is all of you will be familiar with digital transformation. And when I started in '93, we used to do industrial automation. So, for example, why I'm taking that as an example is if we take IoT, for example, it's been there for 2 decades. I've seen IoT in some form in action from that time. We had diodes, we had sensors, we had microcontrollers, kind of a thing, right? So digital transformation, how we look at it in Tiny Magiq is probably you train your mind to look for opportunities which are not obvious. We call it bottom of the iceberg. So to spot bottom of the iceberg opportunities and then use technology to get value out of it is something that we do in Tiny Magiq, spotting bottom of the iceberg. So it's like, if I ask anybody, tell me something that you don't know, nobody can answer that question, including me. However, there's a bunch of tools which you can use to leverage that. And the inspiration actually came having worked in Microsoft for 10 years before Tiny Magiq. I realized that world over, the same problem faced by technologists is finding that key problem which you can bring a smile to the customer. And that's usually hidden. And going after the stated need never really produces the wow. It's like, yeah, I wanted this problem, you solved it, good job, take your money, please go. I'm not delighted. But when we solve a bottom of the iceberg problem, there we create a thing. So we want to focus on that thing and pick up those bottom of the iceberg opportunities. So that's what we do. And endeavor has been to how do you discover these things, use technology and solve it is what we are about.
Awesome. Thanks, Kumaran. Moving on, Praveen, thanks for joining. Can you give us a brief intro about yourself and the company and what you do and things like that?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me here, Sudar and WPChennai. So I think it has been. I feel good being part of this conversation because this is something which I do day in, day out, and so I'm looking forward to have a great conversation with all of you guys over here. And specifically with respect to DCKAP, so we are a full-service digital commerce agency. So with respect to digital commerce, so we help with end-to-end solutions, and we also have our in-house products. So we pretty much help customers drive revenue. And specifically, I focus on the distribution space and helping them drive revenue around those lines. And prior to being with DCKAP, so I used to work at Amazon for over 7 years. And so I'm also a PMP certified professional. So that's a quick list about myself.
Awesome, thanks. And I understand that DCKAP used to be used to have a physical office and things like that, right? So you are a company who have become remote, not by choice, but by need, right? Is that correct to say?
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, but then one good thing, at least over the last 1 year or so, I think we have been consciously thinking about it. So in fact, we have been thinking if we should have one more office and maybe some of the other localities, maybe even within Tamil Nadu, like Coimbatore or all of these locations. But then COVID has given us some good answers to the way we should be going forward with. So I think, yeah. So, and again, we were also diversified in terms of what we were doing earlier. Mm-hmm. And things have changed a lot. And we were one of the few organizations who had this work from home even before the lockdown started, right? So even a couple of weeks before the lockdown started, we could kind of, so fortunately, that helped some of these folks to go back to their hometowns and all of that. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know. I think I'll probably also be asking you more about the transition, because you are somebody who has currently been in the transition, just experienced it, and I think there'll be a lot of things that we would be able to learn from that experience. I think I'll definitely be coming back with you with more questions around that. Yeah, cool. So Next is Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to be with all of you guys. I'm a WordPress developer who currently works at Elegant Themes. So Elegant Themes, they focus on page builder, especially for WordPress. And we've been doing that, with a good team of people and with good support. So Elegant Themes, right from the beginning, it is a remote company, and we have developers all over the world. And it's, the collaboration is really good in terms of development, be it support, whatever. So that's what we do at Elegant Themes.
Awesome. And and you're also working from home, and you're based out of Salem, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll probably be again asking more details about like how like you're able to actually work from your hometown and things like that regarding the remote opportunity. And I believe Bigul has joined. Hi, Bigul. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah. Hi,
Good,
Sudar.
good to have you. How's the connectivity now? Is it better?
Yeah, I went to, this is my office space.
Okay.
So I back to office space because I'm not sure about my connection at home because it may interrupt at any moment because of rain here, monsoon started here. This is my office space. So I'm here after March, last week of March.
Okay, looks like we gave you an opportunity to come back to your office.
Yeah. Because I don't want to interrupt this meetup. First of all, Vanakkam Chennai WordPress community.
And I really appreciate you.
My Tamil is very bad. That is why I'm not saying big words in Tamil. I can understand Tamil, but I can't talk much. Thank you for inviting me. Actually, I'm Bigul. I'm from Calicut, Kerala. I'm part of WordPress community for last almost a decade now. And currently I'm working for OnTheGoSystems, the makers of WPML and toolset. I'm working for this company since 2012 January. Our company is totally remote and we don't have any actual working office. We only have a registered office. And now around 90 plus people from all over the globe. Most of them are from Europe, working in our company. All are remote. So actually, this job was not a choice. It came to me accidentally. I was a bit hesitant to choose remote working. Actually, my CEO was a very kind person. So he gave me an opportunity to try for 6 months. And after that, I decided to join in 2012. So almost 9 years in the company. So it's a great opportunity. Even though I can tell you later what all are the reason I decided to join for a remote job. Okay, later. Thank you all. Nice to see you all, especially Robert. I didn't expect you here, but anyway, glad to see you after a long gap. Thank you.
I'm everywhere.
Yeah, Robert and his hats are everywhere. You would definitely recognize him with a hat.
Yeah. I never seen him without a hat. I think once I removed to see his head.
Yeah, and he's also been pretty regular with our meetings. He has also been here for the last meetings.
Okay, glad.
Okay, now with more reason for you to regularly come and join our meetings.
Yes, I will.
Okay, cool. So moving on, right? And thanks everyone for joining and like also for introducing yourself. A brief thing about me. I'm also working remotely. I'm working for a company called 10up. It's a full WordPress service agency, and it's also a fully remote and distributed company. Like how Bigul said, they just only have a registered office and there's no physical space, and we are spread all over the world. There are about close to 200 people right now. And people are like spread all over the world, and and I've been there for about 6 years right now. So for 6 years, my bedroom has been my office. So anyway, So moving on, right? So the very first thing that I actually wanted to touch upon is the remote companies versus distributed companies, right? I'm pretty sure both Daniel and Bigul, like both of you are actually working not just for a remote company, but it is also a distributed company, right? So what are the major challenges that you would say, or more than the challenges, right? What are the first distinction that you would say between a remote company and a distributed, a remote company and a remote and distributed company? Bigul and Daniel, both of you can answer.
Okay, Daniel, please, you can carry on.
I was about to tell you to start.
Okay, maybe I should just say one of your names, so that would be easier going forward. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
All right. So honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing about distributed. It's kind of like, confusing between remote and distributed.
Okay, so maybe I should probably explain that term, right? So remote company is somebody where you are actually going to be working from your home or working from somewhere. You don't have like a physical location. A distributed company is where it is actually spread across globe, right? Where people are not only from a specific city or a state or a country, but like people are actually spread all over the world in different countries. So that's what I meant by distributed company. For example, like from the panelist, I can say that Kumaran, would you consider Tiny Magiq as a distributed company or a remote company?
I think I have the same challenge as Daniel. I would pick remote to be safe. We are a remote company.
Okay. So, so that was something that I actually wanted to start off with, but I think let's move on with the next question. Right. So what is, I'll probably go with everybody in the panel for this. The question is what is one significant difference that you would say between
Sudar, now that I got some time to think about it, right, I would probably try to give one thing about a distributed company and how it works and its dynamics. Maybe you can say whether that's what it meant. Like, I'll actually take Microsoft, where I used to work. I used to work with Microsoft consulting services. I was not in the product development. Now, what happened is the consulting group had around 120 people in India, and we were spread across different cities. However, we will get together and deliver stuff, and each of us will sit in one of the office that belongs to us. But that's just a place to sit. We are actually what we call as virtual teams. The sales guy will be in Bangalore, the accounts guy will be in Bombay, the database consultant will be in Delhi, I will be in Chennai here taking care of the front end, and we have a customer's business problem to solve. Once in a while we will travel, but then we would have to work remotely. So we are working remotely, but we are a distributed team. We don't have a remote office, but we have distributed office, but we don't go to our office because most of the time we are either at the customer's location because it's a consulting job. And practically I don't have any other team member of mine in office. So if that is the thing that you're talking about, then the challenges typically there is that you walk into an office, your team member is not there. You are just walking into the office for the infrastructure over there. It's either the internet or to file your expenses, stuff like that. But you don't walk into the office to do your work. Okay. And in that case, most of our interactions used to be with calls. Video wasn't that popular. I joined in 2005. So most of it was video calls and IM. So that's how that kind of a thing, that distributed thing works. And a lot of services companies like Wipro and all have that thing, right? They have 100 centers all across the globe. I don't know if that's what you are looking for.
Yeah. So I was, I think like more or less that's what I meant by distributed, where like it's when you say your team, right? Your team members are not actually going to be restricted to a single physical location, right? It need not be your office, it need not be your city, but it could be like all across. For example, in my team right now at 10up, I could easily count people from 2 or 3 continents, and most of the time, like it's even the time zones are also going to be completely different. Maybe I would have like very difficult overlap time between them when I work with them and things like that. That's mostly what I was looking at, what I was referring as distributed.
And,
Okay.
sure. So that, and additionally on top of whatever you guys are saying, right? So again, with respect to distributed versus remote kinds of, we kind of work in a remote basis, right? So at least in what, at least in my perspective, right? So it has to be, I understand that WordPress is more of a community which is kind of distributed, right? So I think that might be a great example where you do not have much of physical locations, but then you're distributed across. But then there are some challenges also, right? So as I'm really thinking about it, so one thing is, so if you're kind of doing it that way, because a man has generally been considered as a social animal in some ways. So I think there has to be some interaction, right? So people have to come and at least you need to give them that option. But again, I understand, right? But over a period of time, that wouldn't matter. But initially, I feel sometimes that might be required for at least for some folks. But for some of them, I think they would prefer being a distributed fashion.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, moving on, right? So one thing that I actually wanted to ask, like each one of you, is especially like people who have already been doing remote and people who are just like getting started with remote, right? What is, if somebody is going to ask you like something like an elevator pitch, right? What is in one sentence, if you can explain what is the major difference that you feel between like a normal work and like, you know, a remote work where you don't have like an office space? I think I'll probably go with Praveen first, because I think you would like have very fresh memories of the two differences right away, right? So I think I'll probably go with you first. Like, you know, if someone is have to ask you like what is the single major difference between like working from office and working from home, what would you say?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just tell two of them. So, so I think one thing on the professional front, what I wanted to say was, so I think I definitely missed being at office. So I get to have chit chats, maybe go out for breaks and sit together, and maybe some ideas come up. So then you huddle together and all of that. The other thing is more on the personal front, where you kind of get to be with the family a little more. And yeah, but then prioritization is a different thing, which we could discuss later as well. But yeah, so these are my thoughts.
Okay, cool. Kumaran, what are your thoughts now? If you can.
To me, I think remote working basically means a lot of freedom and more bandwidth. So that's definitely the positive. The one thing, yes, I'm a very social person, right? Like it's kind of funny. When I used to work in Microsoft, when I had work, I'll be in home. And when I go to office, that means I'm literally free, or I'm not billing, or I'm jobless. So it became a culture. Like when I head to office, people will say, Kumaran is jobless, he's going to disturb us. Okay, so for me, it is like when I didn't have work, I'll go to office. When I had work, I'll stay home. So for me, it used to work like that.
Very interesting. I think like you probably, even before you actually started doing full-time remote working, I think it was probably for you very eased in, right? It's not like till one day you're working from office and then just you jump the gun and then become like
it happened over decades, literally. Interestingly, before Microsoft, I used to run my own company. My company was in Bangalore, family was in Chennai. So 3 days I'll be here and 2 days I'll be in Bangalore. So it was probably for nearly 20 years I've been doing this.
Okay, pretty cool. So Daniel, what would you say, like, you know, from, if you have to say one thing that is very different between remote and physical office, what would you say?
All right. So I partly agree with Kumaran here. It's freedom, to be honest. But I do have, two different perspectives. So being a developer, it gives me the isolation to focus, or the thing that we call, zoning in. So we can do deep work without being, nagged by people or such things. The other end of the spectrum is where you look at things from a, leadership perspective. So if you are the leader who perceives your team as people who take responsibilities. The remote work is totally um, fun and reliable and productive. And being a developer or being part of a team, if you take ownership, then you will love remote job. Whereas in office, I don't see. I mean, I'm not seeing that as a problem right now. But the thing is, when you go to the office, you kind of feel that it's everyone's responsibility, not just yours. But when it comes to remote job, you have to show more ownership that builds trust amongst your leaders. So that's how I see it.
I think this kind of reminds me the dialogue from Spider-Man, where with great power comes greater responsibility. I think when you're working from home, it actually gives you much freedom, much power, but it also has, together with that, you also have to be responsible, I guess.
Yeah, very true.
So Bigul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, my points are already already pointed.
Maybe for the next question, I'll ask you first. So that we can...
Kumaran and Daniel, I totally agree with you. One of the main reasons I joined, I decided to continue with remote work because of the freedom. It gives a lot of freedom. Although we have responsibility, we have to take care of the timing, we have to take care of the environment, and we have to keep the phase. So there are a lot of things we have to take care, especially the environment, the working environment. We have to take care of. Even though we are taking care of the environment, but we are getting a lot of freedom. Actually, we are our own boss here. Even though we have a hierarchy or IT structure hierarchy at our company, but even though we are totally controlling us in the remote work. For example, in most of us will be familiar with the normal office job. So there will be somebody will be totally monitoring you here, and sometimes it will be a little arrogant. Many of them had similar experience. Also, here, for example, they will be restricted for the dress code, and most of the companies will not be allowing us to have beard or like that. There are a lot of don't do there. But in the case of remote work, we don't have. We can wear all the casual things. We can manage our home and family better if we are on the remote. We don't have to travel each day. As you know, if for example, most of the people, if they are living in Indian metros, they totally know the irony of traveling from home to office. So it's a big tough thing. We will lose at least 1 hour or more in the road. But here it's we can save at least that time, and we can spend at least that time for the family. These are the main things forced me to start with remote job. I really loving it. I think it will be very, very tough for me to if I decided to go for a normal office job. In next day or something like that, it will be horrible for me. I had a little experience once. I had a issue with the net, so I went to one of my friend's office and I worked from there. To be honest, they didn't disturb me, but that environment was a bit disturbing for me. So,
I think you're completely spoiled. You'll not be able to go back. It's like how in Matrix, like you have taken the red pill, you cannot go back now.
It will be very tough to go back to office job.
Cool. Okay, so actually, like that also kind of reminds me that the moment you said dress code, that kind of also reminded me. Like I don't think I haven't bought any formal clothes in the last probably 6 years, 7 years. So. Anyway, so
because of web camps, we don't want to buy the t-shirts at least.
Also, I'm supposed to have like a family video call this week, and that's the reason why I've shared. Otherwise, like I was having a beer here. Anyway, so moving on, right? Okay, Bigul, now I'm going to come with you first. So the first question to you is like, now that people are working from remote and things like that, what is like the type of tools that you use? Because obviously like when you're working remotely, you still need to have collaboration with your teammates or the other people at your company, right? And what would you what would you, or basically what are the tools that you use for that, and also the methodology? So I'm interested more, not just more in the tools, and more than the tools, I'm also interested in the methodologies or the communication pattern that you're using for interacting and collaborating with your other people in your team.
Initially, when we start working with OnTheGoSystem, we were mainly using Skype for our communications, and we were having a Google. Gmail official account. The pro version.
G Suite, okay.
Yeah, for that. And after that, sometimes most of the people, because of Skype, it will be a problem for the people who are not working on Windows OS, especially on the, it has compatibility issues with many Linux OSs. So we decided to go to Hangout. And we were using Hangout for a long time, but since Zoom has released last couple of years, at least last couple of years, we are totally using Zoom for our all kind of meeting, weekly meeting, any kind of meeting. We are using Zoom, and also we also use just after Skype, we had a Slack chat. We used Slack for the text communication between our team. Last 2, 3, almost 4 years, we have a Mattermost. We are using Mattermost. It's self-hosted Mattermost, and we have a lot of channels. So there will be a proper channel for all kind of communication. So there will be at least we have more than 20 to 30 channels, like our WordPress Slack account. So it will be very easy for us to text with any of our team member using the Mattermost self-hosted method. These are the communication method we are using, and most of the communication nowadays will be through the Slack, the Mattermost channels, and we have Zoom meeting often, at least every. For example, currently I work in WPML support team. There are around 25 members in the WPML support team itself. So this team is divided to 3, and we will have a weekly meeting for these 3. The team, the team meeting and the support meeting. So we will have, for example, Wednesday we will have team meeting, and Thursday we will have support meeting. So, and once in a while we will have all the company meeting, and also we have a in Mattermost we have a channel called water cooler. So we can discuss whatever we want in that channel. So it will be also a lot of we can also share the funny things during our work also. And we also have a bi-weekly we have a meeting called the coffee break. It will help us to discuss with a number of things with our teammates. So it's well structured. And another thing, because of I'm just sharing my office remote experience. Because of lockdown, now we are not able to go outside, or because most of my colleagues are health conscious, so they were going to gym, they were going to walk in the beach at least 1 hour in a day, something like that, or they were doing yoga or like that. They are fitness and health conscious. So because of this lockdown, we have 2 warm-up sections, one in the morning and one in the evening. So we can also warm up in between our office work now. So we can do little exercises. So these are the communications. Communications and the way we work for the company. So,
actually, like I asked you one question, you kind of also answered my second question. Like I was about to ask also, like, what are the things that you do in case, like, to compensate for lack of physical connection? But I think like you already answered both of those things together.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll probably ask this again to Praveen. Praveen, like since you are in the process of transition, right, or you just transitioned to remote working, like what are the tools that you are generally using? And like, and have you also like, have you also started changing or adapting any methodologies which you're using for communication to better equip with people who are working from remotely?
Sure, Sudar. So with respect to some of these tools that even Bigul was mentioning, right? So those are pretty much some of the tools even we used to use earlier, right? Because with respect to our communication, so we have our customer base pretty much in the US, and at least for the communication with them and liaising with them. So all of this makes sense. But then I just wanted to touch on a couple of things which we are doing differently, right? So at least with DCKAP, so we do a lot of these events and conferences and all of that. So pretty much in the US and some within Chennai. So, and that is where we also get leads and all of that. So indirectly, so that was one area which we thought that it's getting impacted and all of that. But then we started out with these e-sessions and these e-events in some ways. So I think that was a great a difference in terms of how we are doing things and all of that. So as part of that, so even with respect to Zoom, we have been using it for quite some time. But then I'll be using it to the fullest, right? So with respect to Zoom, as you see, maybe the background is something you can use, and then you can have polls and all of that, even as having these conversations. And the best part I like about Zoom is also having these breakout rooms. So if you're having multiple partners in that, so I could have specific breakout rooms for these partners and then move them all to particular breakout rooms, and they can have conversations there. So that is more from an external communication. And internally as well, so we have these monthly meetings and all of that. And then after the meeting, what we do is we kind of split it into breakout rooms. And that is where we have some fun. We have these chit chat talks and all of that, which happens. So that makes things easier. And and outside of this, so we use a lot of other tools in terms of Calendly and all of that, so which helps with scheduling stuff and all of that. And as part of the transition for me specifically, that were not just the software tools, right? Even with respect to the setup and all of that. So that was a transition because with respect to the desk, the chairs. So I think all of that had to change, and even with respect to lights. So I have a focus light right now. So I think these are things, because when you're talking to customers, so you want a setup where you're able to communicate with them, and you also look more presentable, right? So so these are some observations that I had.
Okay, thanks very much, Praveen. I think possibly would it be fair to say that even though DCAP was not remote earlier, but you are already using the tools that most people are using, and since you are already very familiar with the tool, that kind of eased your transition into remote working. Would it be fine if would it be correct if I say that?
Yeah, absolutely. So except for these e-sessions or these summits, right? So that is something that we didn't even think about. So except for that, everything else kind of.
Everything else you are okay. That's really good to know. So Kumaran, going on to you, right? I know that you just switched on your light or something there.
Yeah. I just remembered that this is a habit. Anyway, finish.
Yeah. So the question is at Tiny Magiq, what are the tools that you use, and also what from a communication strategy or a methodology perspective, right? Are you doing anything different to accommodate for the fact that people are working remotely?
Yeah, most definitely. Praveen, thanks for reminding. Yes, I had a light. I forgot to switch it on. And I think that's like you were telling in the beginning of the call, right? Habits we develop. I still haven't got into the habit of switching on the light. So, and it became a little dark now. So one part of it was there. Of course, these are the tools. And I think pretty much what Bigul and Praveen, that Slack is what we use, and Zoom is anyway there. But I think for me, one of the most interesting things with Tiny Magiq, this is 6 years now, is when I moved from Microsoft, that was a IC role, which kind of relates to what Daniel was talking about, right? When you're an individual contributor, like a developer, it's still challenging, but not as challenging as when you're leading a team. As a CTO, I have a different kind of a responsibility. It is about coordinating people and making sure we get there. So in a classical office, it's kind of easy. You walk over, you're checking with people what they are doing. They stuck, they come and ask you kind of a thing. So the key switch I had to do was, it's like in the running race, you pass a baton, right? So the first thing which I realized, probably a year or so, there were mistakes that we were making. Like the handover of the baton has to be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in office, if you drop the baton, you just have to turn around and say, hey, I forgot, what do I have to do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're working remote, the call is over. You didn't ask, you're kind of done for, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be very clear with that passing of the baton. So what we do for that is, learned it the hard way, is kind of goes back to habits and mindsets. We had to switch from speak first to write first.
That's a very important thing. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So so from now on, I think we are kind of fair, decent enough in Tiny Magiq, I would say. So any of us have a thought, even if it's an idea. We use simple GitHub to do everything. So today, if you walk in, right, like anybody can walk in and ask, what is X doing? Okay. You can actually find out what X is working on. Okay. So there is nothing outside of the GitHub issues. I'm kind of beating that poor thing to death. Okay. If somebody has to change a font, they will go in there. One team member wanted to shift his house. He said, I want to go back to my village. I went to GitHub and created an issue. In the next 3 months, you will shift the home. That also comes in an issue tracker. He has to get that done. So anything, right? A database has to be cleaned up. A PowerPoint has to be made. We kind of make sure that an idea comes, that impulse, I had to fight this. As a leader, when an idea comes, I immediately want to call the person reporting to me and tell them that idea. Now, as a manager, I cannot keep calling people. One, it interrupts me because it's too much effort. Mm-hmm. Previously, it was like, Rajesh, can you take care of that PowerPoint which has to be done? Okay, it takes 5 seconds. Now I pick up the phone, I dial it out. And interestingly, if you have COVID kind of thing, you have a warning message that the government plays for 20 seconds. I have to wait for it to finish. And finally, I'll say, this the customer you're trying to contact is busy. Okay. So literally 3 seconds has become 2 minutes. Now it doesn't look big, but it is huge. 3 seconds to 120 seconds is 200 times loss of productivity. So what we have kind of switched is, any issue, write first, log it into the issue tracker and assign it to that person. Now it is there for them, and then you kind of schedule it during the weekly meetings. So I guess the key thing beyond whatever others said, right? We have a Slack that takes care of communication between teams. It is about, as a leader, it is for me to assign work. They are clear what needs to be done, and I have to be clear of what will get done. And now, to understand the importance of it, if GitHub is down, Tiny Magiq goes on vacation. We don't know what to do. Nobody knows what we will be doing. Okay, so we are totally dependent on GitHub, right? Otherwise, my team members, I doubt if they get up in the morning, maybe they'll know what current issue that they are working on. But once that's done, they have no idea what's going to happen. No paper, nothing, right? So I would say that would be our lifeline. GitHub is our lifeline beyond code.
It's actually very interesting that you say that. Basically, like, you kind of removed the essential, you kind of removed the entire aspect of somebody telling me what to do. Like, if I need to know what I have to do, I just have to go to GitHub and then see, and I would just pick it up from there, right? It's not like I have to get into a meeting with my team lead or somebody or my manager who has to tell me, like, these are your priorities for the next few weeks, and this is the order in which you have to work on, and things like that. But right now, everything is actually going to be async in GitHub, and people just look at their names and then start picking up.
And
that's a very
one challenge that came up again. It's a thing which I learned. I kind of shifted it when I joined Microsoft. I used to work in another services company below. I'm sure most of you will put up your hands if you get sick and tired of those emails, which is like reply, and you go, guys, what are you doing, man? Do I have to read this whole thread? Why don't you just pick up the phone and call? Why is this? And why am I even CC'd on this? Okay. So when I joined Microsoft first, that happened. My manager called me and he taught me an interesting thing. He taught me the 3-strike baseball rule. He said, you send out a mail. That person doesn't understand, he replies it. Then you are forced to reply again. Now you have done 3 times, right? Pick up the phone and call. So similarly, I kind of adopted that to the GitHub. So I put an issue in GitHub. I assign it. That person asks a doubt on GitHub itself. I clarify it. It doesn't. Then I immediately switch to IM or a phone call. So I think that's another thing that is there. I was trying to say is put it in GitHub like clockwork, it will run. No, it doesn't. Okay. So we still need to come to the other fallback mechanisms.
Okay. I think two important learnings I would say is like write first, talk second, and 3-strike rule. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. What do you call, like, metaphors that I think everybody would be able to use. So Daniel, quickly, do you have anything to add on the tools or processes or methodologies for that, the communication that you use, and for collaboration with your team?
Yeah, sure. I think most of the tools are out. So I'm going to talk a bit on the process. Being a developer, sometimes you might be stuck on your code or something. So during those times when you have a team, or when you want to collaborate with a person who is out of your time zone, what I prefer to do is just record a small screencast and then post it on the GitHub. So that explains the process further, where I'm stuck and what I have to do and stuff like that. I would sometimes use image capturing tool like Snagit, and then use the little arrows and numbers over there. So that simplifies. A picture speaks 1,000 words, and that's what I do. And one of the other challenges that I find is that so with tools like GitHub is very helpful. Like Kumaran said, even in my team, it's hugely helpful. But when there are too many tasks at hand, I feel I'm kind of stressed or something. So what I do is, like, I take a couple of sticky notes and put it like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and line it up on the wall, and then I write one important task that I have to complete for the day, and then paste it on that particular day. So I know what I have to work on, and then once I finish that, I move on to the next task. So this has helped me, to speed up my productivity, to keep me unblocked on things. If I'm stuck on, then I just record a screencast and put it on the GitHub, and then move on to the next issue. So it's like it kinds of it's a way to speed up my process. So that's how I see it. And apart from the tools, this is the process that I follow.
Okay, that's very interesting that you say this, because what I get out of this is when you're working remotely, especially like when you don't have your team member to lean on to whenever you are stuck, you basically have to learn to work parallelly, right? So you are working on a particular task, you get stuck, and you need to know what you can do to proceed beyond it. Either you might have to put the task on hold and move on to another task, or maybe put that particular piece of logic on hold and then proceed with the other things, right? You cannot be stuck. You need to learn to work in parallelly. And I think that's a very good insight there. Thanks, Daniel. Okay, quick time check. I know that we are going to be slightly over time. From a panelist perspective, right? Do any one of you have like a very hot stop at 6, or is it fine if we extend for a couple of more minutes?
We can go. I don't have any problem.
Okay. How about you, Praveen? It's fine with you? Cool. Bigul?
No problem. We can carry on.
Okay. I think it's a very interesting conversation, and I think like we started. I think it will be interesting, and possibly as we keep talking, I think we'll also find more interesting stuff. Okay, so another important aspect which I actually want to bring about is someone who's been involved in remote working for quite some time. One of the recurring theme that I see everywhere where people have to take some additional steps to prevent it is, I would say, mental health issues. I wouldn't say health issues per se, but remote working gives you more, you're kind of, somebody pointed out, right? human beings are basically social animals, right? But remote working kind of makes you restricted to or confines you to a specific space, even though you have all these collaboration tools where you can collaborate with your team members. Maybe because of time zone differences and other things, you would most of the time be forced to work alone, right? And what I've seen over a period of time with like different people is that kind of increases the chance of somebody having stress related issues or depression and things like that, right? So as somebody who is leading a remote team or being part of a remote team, have you experienced these things, and what are the steps that you have taken to to help the person, or help the person with their mental health? I'll probably go with Kumaran first.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely concern. Right, even when I used to do distributed working with Microsoft, right, the challenge we had is most of the team members were in different cities, so we will never get a chance to have a chat with them. That would probably happen when there is a quarterly meeting where we fly out and we are there in the same conference, have a drink or something like that. So I think one of the things which, at least what we used to do in that case, was when somebody comes to this city, right? Like I'm visiting, let's say Delhi, right? I would send a message out telling all Delhi guys, come together, let's hang out. There's no specific agenda to it. Okay, so create an opportunity like that. So in Tiny Magiq, we kind of created something similar. What we did is every fortnight we have rented a office space. It's from 11 to 4. We spend around 6 hours there, general banter, some work, everything put together. So that used to happen every fortnight. Now, probably the impact of lockdown is even that is kind of cut off. Okay. And so one of the things is basically, I guess, ours is people call each other and talk. Okay, so the informal chats have become a problem. The water cooler chats, what we want to talk. So one thing that we do is probably after an official meeting, we kind of let it spill over, right? Not call it off there, and the general banter continues for some more time. So that's one of the things. The other thing I would say is if it's my mental health, I am responsible for that. Now with remote working, that becomes even more stricter. And recently I read an interesting article, because as Tiny Magiq, we also work a lot with neuroscience and understanding it. There is this interesting concept called time triggers, which exist in the brain. Consider that as neural circuits which are there. Now the time triggers us to do certain behavior. It triggers certain parts of your body. Some hormones get secreted, body things get secreted. All of you would have heard of the Pavlov experiment, right? The bell and the dog starts sweating. Now, similar to that, all of us are tuned to it. Now, the simplest trigger is when you kind of swipe in the morning. There is a certain set of triggers that gets fired and the body gets adjusted. Somebody said, like, I have lunch or we catch up for tea. So when you see another person getting up, you get that trigger. Oh, okay, it's time to break. So those two guys have gone for coffee. I also have to go. Hey, wait, I'm also coming, right? Now we have lost all those triggers in remote working. So it's important for us to create those triggers manually. We cannot, and 2 weeks back, one of my ex-Microsoft colleagues called up and he said, it's crazy, man. I said, why? So this guy said 10 o'clock he's finishing a call, and then somebody in the call says, okay, we will have a call at 8. So he asked him, why 8? He said, what else to do? Boss, I have other things to do. Just because I don't have anything, I don't have to take a call at 8. Can we have this call at 10:30? He said, yes. Now, what used to happen is, interestingly, the trigger of office starts after you go into office. Now that the trigger is removed, we are lost. There is really no reason to have that call at 8, right? And that's something that has to be carefully. Identify the triggers to start work, pause work, and end. And it need not be a 9 to 5 thing. My personal thing, I start working at around 9:30. go till 11, 11:30. Then I take a break till 2. Either I would watch an episode, half of a movie, talk something, just chill around, play a game. I play games, so I play some game. And then again at 2:30, I start and I go till 5:30. Then I take another 2-3 hours break. Okay, that's all I do. And Saturday, Sunday, I don't look at it as holidays. I squeeze in another 4-5 hours of work on the weekends also. So we can even it out differently. So we have to, in short, identify your own on trigger, off trigger, what that work is, and make sure that you don't just beat yourself. People who are familiar with aquarium, I think this metaphor will be interesting. How much ever food you put for the fish, it will keep eating. Okay. And it will eventually kill itself by eating itself more. So it's very important to put the right amount of food there. So when you're working remote, it's important to put the right amount of effort. If you're thinking after I finish all my work, I will stop, there's nobody to stop you. In office, they'll shut down the lights. They'll ask you to go. You will see other people. In remote, nothing will do. We'll just kill ourselves by working. And I see that pandemic is something we need to be aware of, which is not very evident. And it will hit over a period of time. If I kind of hold this bottle, right? Anybody, how long do you think it is? Like, no big deal, right? But consider I hold this bottle for half an hour. What's going to happen? I'm going to drop the bottle.
You'll start feeling...
It's called fatigue, right? It's not actually stress. There's another thing called fatigue that happens. Okay. So in mechanical world, it will be there. You won't see a damaged one, but repeated things will break it. See, and the interesting thing about fatigue, right? One day it'll just break. That's it. 1 second it is all right. Second it's completely broken. There is nothing which happens in between. And I think for remote workers, they have to be very careful about this. One day somebody will just turn up and say, I'm done. I'm not working anymore. And they won't be even willing to have a conversation. I think that's very important for all of us to be aware.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point, Kumaran, because as you said, like, I think that, again, you also came up with a very good metaphor of fatigue, because that's something where you're not going to be getting any symptoms, right? It's not something that's actually going to be giving you any signs that it's actually going to break. But when it breaks, it just breaks. Like, and it becomes very difficult to, take care of it after that. It's a very good metaphor, and thanks for bringing that up. And Praveen, I think this will be an interesting question to you, right? Given that you are in the process of transition, have you faced any similar issues with your team, and what are the steps and other things that you're taking, that you're planning to take or already put in action to help people with this?
Yeah. So I would completely agree, right? So with respect to how things are happening and with respect to a transition, so it has been hard, at least maybe from a mental perspective, if we are looking at stuff, right? It has been hard, and I would completely agree with Kumaran on the neurology behind it and all of that. So in fact, I've also been reading a book around that right now on the neuro-linguistic programming and all of that. So I think that is very critical. As we are kind of moving in this direction, right? Because with respect to us getting programmed in a particular way, I think that is going to be very, very critical. Otherwise, you're going to, you're going to get fatigued. I think that might be a right word to use here as well. So that is something we need to be conscious of. So at least the first thing is you need to be conscious of it before you can even act upon it, right? Because again, for you to even have this understanding, I think you need to be trying to self-assess yourself. Only at that point in time, you try to understand, or when you're trying to read some of these books, that's when you really understand on what is going through and why you are being like this, right? So sometimes you get irritated. Why am I irritated right now? I was not like this earlier. So why is it happening right now? So I think that's something which we need to have a self-realization. And once we have that, and then we can have schedules in terms of programming and ourselves and all of that. And one thing we could be doing is, so we need to kind of definitely understand on what is creative or what is interesting for us. So sometimes we do not do that, right? So because we generally go by the day-to-day stuff. So we go to office, come back home, so sit with the family. I think that is what you have been thinking. is all about it, but then you need to think something over and beyond that. So of late, I've started reading some books, so I think that is helping. So for everyone, that could be different on what they want to do. So that will definitely help on how you're kind of restructuring stuff. And as part of it, once you do that, so, and then the physical activities and all of that has to be, first you need to kind of figure out a way on how you can structure your work, and then try to include some of the other items like physical activities and all of that. And once you're done with that, so because the other thing which everybody is focusing right now is upskilling, right? So because remote work, upskilling is kind of a metaphor that is used across. But then for some of them, this is more of a stress. For some of them, this is an opportunity. So if you really look at it, so I think we need to think about it. So first, you need to structure your day-to-day work, and then try to see on how you can add this onto your plate. So otherwise, if you're trying to do that straight away, I think it is going to stress you out. So yeah, these are some initial thoughts and observations that I had.
Okay, pretty cool. Bigul, I think like when we were talking, you already mentioned that you do a couple of things like warm-up meetings and other things, right? So which kind of helps with this. So apart from that, what are the other additional things that you do, and what is your perspective on being mentally fit as when you're working from home?
Actually, our top level is very liberal on this. We can communicate with our managers or our HR at any whatever time we need. For example, if I'm feeling something bad or I'm stressful, we can directly talk to them. We can schedule a call. We can discuss, and we also have at least once in 2 or 3 months we will have a call with our HR manager. So we will be asking about everything. She will be keeping a note of what we are mentioning in the last meeting. So she will be continuously in touch with us. So something, a kind of healing is always with us. So because of this liberalness, we don't feel that much stress. For example, I never feel that much stress here. There is stress, but because we are working, we are competing with the global standards. So, but even though in my past experience, while comparing to my past day-to-day office work experiences, I don't feel that much stress or mental forceness or something like that at this company in our remote workflow. And another thing in my personal experience, I am sharing with you. One of the reason I decided to go forward with remote work was I had health issues just after I became 24, because I was working. I was a kind of workaholic habit, and my boss was also a kind of workaholic. We were working. We were actually that. I didn't work that much like that in the past or after that. Okay, before or after that job. Okay, because of that, when I was almost 24, I had back pain. I had to go to some treatment since that, because sitting long time and there was proper ventilation. So I had health issues. And after that, it was tough for me to sit long time. And after joining this company, we can manage our timing. Once, as Praveen mentioned, once we are structured, it will not be a problem. So once I got, I am familiar to this routine. It helped me to reduce my health. I had also had BP, because I had some health issues, that is kind of ancestry, kind of heredity problem. So because of that, I have some BP related issues because of heredity. That also I was able to manage after joining here. So it helped me to it helped me to rebuild my mental health, also my physical health, because of this remote working. So it's a very good feeling for me. And another thing is that in India we are living in a circle. So whichever direction we go, we have some limitations. But after joining this remote company, also because of part of I'm part of WordPress community for almost last 8 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this give me opportunity to meet lot of, different types of people,
Mm-hmm.
and from different background, global, also from different states of India.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped me to think more open. My eyes and my mind is more wider than, since the last 9 years, my eyes and my mind is more wider because of this remote work and this, meeting with new people. Because here we don't have that much, what to say, we don't have that much stress or anything, because they will always ask us, because there is a difference of country, religion, way of thinking, everything, day to day life also. So always they keep a track of what we are doing, or if everything fine on our local. So it is very good for me, at least. So we don't have that much. This is my perspective and my personal experience for last 9 years. So it's a totally helped me to rebuild my thinking, everything, all aspects of my life. So it's very good for me.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear this, because as I said, like a lot of, I've actually heard a couple of people who had kind of like gotten into mental health issues because of remote working. But I do understand that we have a great opportunity to structure our life around work, not just become life as the work, right? We have the ability to structure work around structure life around work when we work remotely. And it also probably ties back to the point of where we have more freedom, but at the same time, it also comes with more responsibilities, right? So thanks for sharing your personal experience on this. And I think it's a very interesting and it's a very interesting as well as good information for people who would be able to make use of this. So Daniel, quickly, do you have any thoughts to add to this about mental health issues and remote working? Have you come across any? Yeah, please. Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
To stay mentally fit, I have a couple of points on that.
Mm-hmm.
But before going on to that, I have something to say. Mm-hmm. One of the main things why I chose remote was I was working with a well-recognized organization where when I go out for a coffee break, most of the people would be whom I interact with, they would be like, Machan, what's your height percentage and stuff like that. It's all about office and stuff. Like, I do not like that. When you say something about yourself, like if you have done something interesting, right? And when you speak up, people would look at you as an interesting person, right? If you keep on doing things that the other person does, you wouldn't sound interesting. So all the office, the salary politics and the office politics made me to choose remote job, where I don't get to meet people who talk of that sort. Okay, so coming back to the mental fitness, I was curious on remote job and stuff a couple of years back. It took me 2 years to find a remote job from the moment I thought of working remotely. And Sudar, you were my biggest inspiration to find a remote job. So when I was thinking about the office politics and stuff, and I happened to read your blog by then, and I read a sentence that you wrote. I usually work in my lungi, and I was thinking like, wait, we are dealing with office politics, and this guy is working in lungi. How come it's possible? So from that moment on, I was very curious on remote job and stuff. So that's the starting point of my remote journey. And coming back to the mental health, I understood that it's not about how much you work or how hard you work. It is all about understanding what you're supposed to work on. That's number one. So, getting clear expectations from your manager or team leader, you have to understand what you're supposed to deliver, and only then you can invest the effort. So I could be a hard worker, but if I don't deliver what my boss or manager wants, then I'm of no use to him. So understanding your expected deliverables is the key point. Number two, when I, like Kumaran said, when I'm done with the work, the end trigger, I should be done with the work. So I don't have my work email installed on my phone. I don't have Slack installed on my phone, because I know when I'm done for the day, I should be really done for the day. And if I'm not done for the day, it's my responsibility to intimate my team, especially my manager, saying that, okay, hey boss, I tried this. I was about to complete, but on so and so reasons, I was not able to do so. Allow me some time and I would do it. Or if not, we should probably tell the client to extend this time because we are having difficulty on this area. So that's number two. And number three is I have a very short attention span, which is why I write the one thing that I should focus on and paste it on my wall. So I could always see that throughout the day. And this this point reminds me of the quote, out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's really like the focus for me. So when I think about, switching to Facebook or switching to YouTube, I just look at the task at hand and I come back to the task. So that really helps. And the other thing that I want to highlight is that, oh, sorry, my camera is here. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that I cannot work for, longer hours, like Kumaran said. When I start the work, I could easily, deep dive into work for 1 or 2 hours. But then after the deep work, I needed a good break. Meaning it's not a long break, but I wanted something to be very interesting. So this reminds me of the fact that if you're a person who works on your computers all day, then you should. I personally feel that you should have something interesting to do off screen. Like I play with my dogs. I train my dogs. I play with my dogs. It's very interesting. You should try it. If you don't have one, you should get one and try it. So training dogs is something that I am really fascinated. I'm passionate towards. It helped me going. Like, they they're not here now, but they would often enter my space, and then they remind me to take a break. So they have a routine now. They go to sleep by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, and then they wake up by 11:30 or 11:45. That's a reminder. That's a trigger. It's funny, and having something interesting off the screen is really important, is what I feel. And beyond that, to stay mentally fit, like I told you, try doing things that not many people do. So that would give you an additional edge even in your job. So you could be the interesting person on your team. You could be you could be an inspiration to other people. So yeah, these are my take on mental health.
Yep. And thanks for bringing this excellent point about having something else to do apart from the screen, right? I think that's a very important thing. Personally, I have a terrace garden and I also have an aquarium. I think those are things that help you, like once you're done with your job, right? It actually helps you to close your laptop and then move on. Like you have something else to do apart from just staring at the screen for a longer period of time. So I think that's really good, and thanks for
have similar tastes, so that I too have.
Man, we should talk. I think like I have gone to a point where in aquarium hobby there is something called multi-tank syndrome, where you start with one tank to have your fish, then you end up buying more and more tanks. I got to a point where I had to choose between having my fifth tank or saving my marriage. So yeah, so I can totally understand that.
I think the same goes with dogs. I initially had one, now I have two. I'm planning for the other one.
Okay, have you already told your wife about it?
No.
Okay, very interesting topics. Okay, I have like still a lot more to discuss, but I think we would definitely be way over at time. So I just want to quickly ask you two things. So I'll probably start with myself. I want you to tell about one interesting aspect that happened to you because of remote working, and possibly one very personal thing that I mean, if you're again comfortable sharing one very personal thing which you feel is really worth all the effort that you have put in for remote working, right? So I'll go first, and then I think like possibly each of you can talk about that. So one interesting or funny thing happened to me when I started working remotely for the very first time, right? What ended up happening was like my neighbors started seeing that I'm not going out of my home. So they actually assumed that I've lost my job. I got laid off or something like that. I've lost my job. So they actually were very concerned about our family. So they were kind of very candidly were coming and asking us like, hey, let me know if you need any help, or like, let me know if you need any help in finding a new job, or, if there is something that needs to be taken care of, come and let me know. I mean, let us know, and when we will do it. So that was an interesting thing that happened to me when I first started a remote job. And the personal experience, which I feel is really worth me, is my second son was born after I started doing remote work, right? And I could actually be involved with him on every stage of his life because I am staying at home and I'm actually able to see him. It's not, I mean, like, even though for my first son, right, I was possibly like just 2 kilometers away. My office and home were only 2 kilometers apart, but still I missed all the first things that he did. Like the first time he tried to crawl, the first time he actually, like, usually the kids will be like sleeping, seeing up, and then the first time they turn, right? I missed that. I missed the first time he walked, the first time he crawled, and first time he said a word and things like that. But with my second son, I was there for every single one of those things because I'm at home. So if it's going to happen, my wife would just call me and I can just be part of that moment. I think personally, that is the most satisfying thing for me with remote work. Okay, so with that, I would go with each one of you. Who wants to go now? Kumaran, can you tell me like what are your shared things?
The funny thing was, it was much before Tiny Magiq itself, even with Microsoft. One of the things that is, as I said, there used to be kind of travel to different locations depending on customer. And my daughter was like, she was probably 7-8 years old at that time. So my parents' house is next, and then they asked, she had actually gone there, and she said, Appa's gone to Bangalore. Okay. This was probably at around some 2:33. 6 o'clock, I walked into their office. My mom is shell-shocked. She said, you're in Bangalore. How come you are here? I said, I didn't go to Bangalore or anywhere. It's just that when they get up, they see me. Okay. That day I had left house earlier before she got up. So she didn't see me. She made an assumption that I'm in Bangalore. Okay. So they kind of get used to us being there, right? And so that's one funny thing which I can think of. The gratifying, I guess the most gratifying thing or the good thing is the amount of time I have to spend on transactions, right, which are non-value added stuff, has come down drastically. Especially when we're doing business development. I think any of you who are doing business development would agree with me. 1 hour to travel to that location, 15 minutes to park your car, another 10 minutes to get the security and the gate pass. Okay. Then you go and wait for another 10 minutes. Then you do a chit chat before you get into the actual discussion there. Once the meeting is over, you can't just say done and walk off. You have to cool down that meeting and then again the whole thing out. So to finish 1 hour of a meeting, I would have to spend at least 3 hours as the overhead for that. Okay. And in remote working, that 3 hours is mine to do whatever I want. And I think that's the biggest advantage I have had as a person in charge of developing the business and leading the team as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a very, very interesting point. Thanks for sharing that. Cool. Bigul, do you want to go next?
Shall I talk? Hello.
Yeah. Can we just like finish off this panel discussion and then we will take up questions from the audience after that. Bigul, can you quickly go?
Yeah. as you described, I also had the same feeling. It helped me to spend more time with my family because I spend till I joined this company, I spend after my completing my uh, pre-university, I spend most of the time outside my native for my higher education and also for my job. So I didn't got a chance to spend much time with my family after my just after my 17 years. So this give me a lot of time to spend with my family. I can focus more on my children. For example, weekends. Weekends are completely spent for my family, especially for my children. When I'm not traveling for attending any meetups, okay, or webcams. So also I can cook. Or I can help my mother or wife for cooking. So it's because a lot of time we can spend with my family, also my close relatives. So it give me a lot of opportunity to spend time on my native after. For example, I am from a small, it's the third biggest city in my state, but even though the IT industry is not big here, so for example, I have to go to. I was in Kochi for almost 8 years. Now I'm in Calicut. So I was all the weekend I was traveling in between these two towns. It's around 4 to 5 hours travel. I can save all this time I can spend for the family. And also I was thinking that if because of lockdown, it will be very tough for for me if I was in Kochi than Calicut. So the main thing we can spend more time with our close ones. That's the advantage I got for because of the remote work. And more than that, it's give me a great opportunity to meet many people from around the globe. For example, I got an opportunity to attend few company conference and wait camps. In wait camps, I met many good people like Sudar, Robert, Nagesh, few of them, Aditya, Maruti. A great thing because of remote work. I got an opportunity to also. Uh, uh, because we are working on open source, so I would like to point out one more thing. Because before joining WordPress community, I didn't know that I had a misunderstanding. Maybe it's my misunderstanding that it will not be possible for a code developer. It will be only possible for a code developer to support open source or work in open source. But after joining WordPress community, I got an opportunity. I mean, my misunderstanding was corrected, and it gave me an opportunity to, contribute to open source or live as a part of open source because of this remote work. I'm sure only because of this remote work, I got a freedom to do all these things, and I got an opportunity to meet all you guys. Okay, that's the best thing I got because of this.
Thanks, Bigul. It's actually it's actually very ironic that you say that just because you're working remotely, you actually were able to meet a lot of interesting people, right? I mean, if you actually look at it from a high level perspective, it's very ironic, but at the same time, it's I can see how that's turning out to be. So thanks for sharing that. And I totally agree with you about the community, right? So the WordPress community and how it's not like, it's not exclusive for hardcore developers, right? I think I understand both your points and appreciate you for bringing them up. So Daniel, can you quickly tell us your story?
Yeah, sure. So in addition to all the points that you guys mentioned, I have something to add. What I find the most interesting part in a remote job for me personally is like I can have my coffee in my own time at my own leisure, right? It's quite funny. I understand that. So I enjoy the sip of the coffee with the fresh air outside. So that's very interesting. Really, I do enjoy that part the most because when I was working in a corporate office, I did not have the opportunity to do so. Every morning I had to run quickly to the office because we had the 9 o'clock call. So that was very disturbing for me in terms of my sipping coffee. So that was very interesting. And the other thing that I found it was when I initially joined the work, the remote work, people, especially the South Indians, it's very new for them, and they started looking at me as, um, um, you know, as the one that you mentioned, like unemployed. But now things are turning up, and people who criticized or um, or of that sort, now they wanted to work remotely, and they're asking of opportunities, to help them with the opportunities. It's quite funny. So these are the interesting stuff after I joined remote work. And not only that, I did have time to raise pets, which was not possible earlier. So now I'm being with my pets, apart from being with the family, and I'm able to learn new things, especially dog training. If it was not for the remote job, I wouldn't have learned dog training and stuff. I got the opportunity to take on or collaborate with open source projects, because I didn't have I don't have, I mean, I need not spend time on commute, so I could use that for that. And in terms of learning, yes, it provided me an opportunity. So these were the stuff.
Very interesting. Very interesting, Daniel. Looks like you also have another coffee lover in the comments. All right. So I was just looking over the comments just to see if people have any questions. So again, like if you have any questions, you can leave them in comments and we would take them up. So I was just scrolling over the comments quickly and realized that people were talking about, during our initial discussion, we were talking about the different age and how Kumaran was sending emails and things like that, right? So I could see different chat comments where somebody was saying that they were born after that and somebody was already finished college by that. And it's good to see people from diverse background being part of this meeting. So as I said, people, like if you have any questions, you can just post them in comments right now, and then we would ask that with the panel team. So while we wait for any questions, right? One interesting, maybe like I think we missed Praveen on this. Praveen, sorry for missing you. Like, what are your interesting
Not a problem.
topics about? Very sorry about missing you on this.
No problem. That's fine. Yeah. So, yep. So with respect to interesting stuff, so I wouldn't say specifically on the remote working, but then it is more attributed to the COVID situation right now. So I think I would have never dreamt of something like this. So I had my DIY haircut done from home by my wife. So this is something which I never thought of sometime back then. So yeah, and then with respect to family, so you get to spend a lot more time with kids and all of that. I think it is in line with what you guys were discussing about, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Cool, pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, speaking of haircuts, right? I tried mine. I just wanted to just trim my hair, but it went to the point where there's this story in Tamil about like how you share one dosa with like two people or whatever, right? So similarly, like, I tried one side of it. It was very bad. Like trimmed it much. So then I had to do the other way. Then it went so much and like ended up having almost like, cut it very short. Anyway, so looks like there aren't much questions. It was a very interesting chat that we had. I'm pretty sure, like, we'll probably do this sometime again because there's like still some more topics that I actually wanted to cover. Things like, how you would measure productivity and, are there any metrics that you would have and things like that. But we are way over time. So I think we will probably stop now. But again, as I said, maybe beyond some time we will try to do this again. And thanks everyone for taking time to join during even though it's a Saturday, and then spending time, especially all the panelists. Thanks everyone, and see you soon.
Thanks, Sudar. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks all.
Yeah, same here.
Yep.
Thanks,
see you guys soon.
Bye.
Thank you all. It was nice to have a chit chat with you all. See you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, WordPress community, WordPress Chennai community, for this opportunity. See you
Thanks,
soon.
Bigul.